What's happening, guys? Back in the shop again. Working on the 261, putting it back together. Customer had a plug stripped. It's walled out pretty good. Just had to helicore it, and I put a new set of threads in this head. And now I'm checking the squish, see if we can do a base gasket delete. I like to be around 20 thousandths, give or take. But I'm going to be about 50 only because the helicore comes down a little bit inside the head, and I've got to give a little bit of clearance for that. So I can't really, I can mill the base and get it down a little closer, but the customer, like I said, don't want to rip her really. He just wants a good wood saw. So just a base gasket delete will be fine. It'll still run good. Give him a little bit more performance than he had, and he'll have a running saw versus one that's wouldn't run. So basically what you do is check squish, get you some solder. I use rosin core. I don't use the acid core because it could damage the aluminum. Stick it in the cylinder. You want it on the back side, or the bottom side rather, and then the top side. I've already done this one, so I've got about around 40-ish on this, which would be fine for this saw. But I need a little extra clearance for the helicore that I installed. It comes in a kit. You can get them online. The customer provided this one. You just re-tap it. But it was walled out so bad that there's only a few threads that would even actually tap. So, if this don't work, I told the customer, we got a 50-50. That's the odds I give it based on how bad it was walled out. It was walled out prior to him getting it. He bought it second hand, so we're gonna try to make it operational. So I'm gonna put it back together. I got to pull the head back off and put some gasket maker down instead of using the base gasket that it came with. We're going to do a base gasket delete. So got to give me a little bit more. It's not going to be a ripper, but it ought to run good. I think he'll enjoy it. So anyway, we'll get that head back off. If you ever decide to do a base gasket delete, always check your squish, which is the squish basically, I guess, for those who don't know, the band in the top is where, let me rephrase that, the clearance you have between the piston and the head is what referred to as a squish. That's basically your gap to keep the piston from hitting the top of the head. 20 thousandths is a good rule of thumb. I've done them closer on race saws. I don't do it on a wood saw or a saw that's going to be ran consecutive for a long time. Any type of metal, as it gets hot, it expands. So you got to keep that in mind. And this one being helicored, I needed a little bit more clearance in the top of the head because that helicore comes down into the cylinder a little bit. It comes in a set. And I used the smallest one there was. So other than milling it and losing threads, I didn't have a lot of options really. A lot of options as far as getting it out. I'm just going to pull this up and out of the way. take all my screws back out so one of them don't accidentally fall down in the case while I'm maneuvering this thing around. I said I was going to. If you go back a couple of videos, I'm not sure where it's at in the list, but I showed working on this saw, or working on the head rather. And we did just a small, a little shaving on it, nothing crazy. Nothing extreme, just excuse me, just something to give them a little bit more power. Like I said, he didn't really want a full-blown ported saw. He just wanted, while I was in there getting the carbon out that was there previous to him, and pull the cylinder off. While I was getting the carbon out prior to him having the saw and cleaning that up, I went ahead and just hit the exhaust a little bit. Not so much the floor, just a little bit on the transfers, a little bit inside the exhaust side. Smoothed it up, made it a little bigger. Gasket matched it, and a little on the intake side. Nothing real crazy. Just smoothing things up a little bit. Maybe get a little bit more out of it. What I use for base gasket deletes is, it's called Moto Seal. It's made by Permatex. It's a really good sealant. I haven't had any failures, knock on wood, due to the sealant. It's pretty good stuff. It's a little on the pricey side, I think, for gasket maker, but it's like anything else, you pay for what you get. You can see me putting it on here. Use just a flat blade screwdriver. Go back in view here. Just put it on a little bit at a time, so it don't make a huge mess. You can always go back and touch it up. Sometimes I get my finger and just kind of rub it around on there, around the bowl holes. Make sure you clean it good. I cleaned this with some brake clean, something that don't leave a residue. You want this stuff to stick really well. It usually does a good job. Like I said, I've knock on wood, I've not had any issues with the Moto Seal. In the past, I used a Permatex brand sealer that I had some issues with. It could have been my error, or just error of the gasket maker in general. But I shied away from it and started using the Moto Seal. Ever since I've been using the Moto Seal, I've had really good luck with the gaskets not leaking. It gets a little messy, but you can go back and hit it with a Q-tip or hit it with a rag and kind of clean it up a little bit. We don't want it, not that anybody will ever see it, but we don't want it looking bad. I don't like stuff not done right. All right. Get my handy dandy ring compressor. These things are pretty handy. I used to do it all by hand, but it makes things a little bit easier. There's pins on either side of the piston, generally, depending on the piston. At least all I've seen have it. Some of the Chinese aftermarkets don't, but there's usually a dot or something to line them up. You never want to get your piston gaps in the same spot. If you do, you're going to have issues. You'll lose compression. So, something to keep in mind. Those little pins are supposed to keep it from sliding. This one really don't keep it from sliding, but once you put the ring compressor on, if you never use one of these, they're pretty handy, but it takes a little getting used to. If you put the top around the first ring, makes life a little easier, and leave a little bit of piston sticking up. Start your cylinder on, and then you just kind of push the cylinder down. As you push the cylinder down, the piston will slide up in there, and it'll close the gaps. Close the gaps on the rings. Like I said, it makes it a little easier. This thing's kind of aggravating sometimes to get back out, but nevertheless it's pretty handy. So you pull your guide back out, or your lock, and then just trash in here. You just kind of ease it down until it lines up. Should line up pretty easy. One more thing. When I go back in with the head bolts, I use a little thread locker, the blue, not the red. If you use the red, you'll never get them back out. I ain't gonna say never, but it'll be a job. So I put a little blue on there. It's also made by Permatex. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I find their products are really good. Like I said, I've never had any issues with exhaust bolts or head bolts backing out using it. I don't know that it's 100% necessary. It's just a little extra safeguard I do. And usually when you take the bolts out of these, especially Stihl and some of the higher end saws, a lot of theirs have a factory thread locker on them. If you notice when you take them out, it's kind of a grayish looking. Generally, it's a grayish looking type blue stuff. One more. You don't have to put a tiny little bit of this stuff. I mean, a little bit goes a long way. You don't have to really gum it up on there, so it just makes a mess. And then the next person's gonna hate you if you put too much, because it becomes difficult. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's this one down in here is a little tricky because there's always something in the way. Either it's your own hand or some piece of the saw. I generally like to take them completely apart when I do this, but to cut down on labor time where I'm trying to do things efficiently as possible, but I prefer to take one completely down. That way I know everything's clean. I can inspect the bearings. And so what I do on these head bolts is just run them down until they touch on either side. You'll feel them start getting snug. Excuse me. And get them all snug. Do about a quarter of a turn, and then switch the opposite corner, quarter of a turn, switch the corner, switch the corner, quarter turn, switch back. You never want to tighten one side down at the same time. This is not good practice. And after they're pretty tight, you don't have to He-Man torque them. For those of you who know who He-Man is, let's go back and give them one good little twist. Probably not even 1/8 of an inch. It's just very minimal. You can tell when it bottoms out. And that's it. That's it for the head, the squish. Measured everything out. We're all within specs, or at least what I like to run the saw. This particular one, anyway. I was going to do the muffler mod / whatever on camera, but I just didn't have time. So basically, we just milled the inside out and then welded back a little stainless port that'll be sturdy and what have you. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but you don't see it. You only see pretty much that portion of it. And there again, he wanted a budget build. He didn't want a full-blown race saw. So not that I cut corners on workmanship or durability, but I didn't put a lot of time in it. It was quick and quick and to the point, I guess be the best way to put it. So yeah, so it ought to breathe a little better now anyway. So that's that. I'm gonna finish getting this all put back together. Basically carb back on, and we'll bring you back probably the next video for a test run and a tune, just to see how things go. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment. Future builds. There's a lot of stuff ahead to get done, and as I get better internet connection, or a internet connection, I guess I could say, I'll try to do more lengthy videos, more how-tos. We'll do some testing, and it'll be more in depth, without trying to cover as much good information that I know of to pass along, but not be boring at the same time. So it's hard to go through every step of a process and not bore you to death. So anyway, comment, like, subscribe. Appreciate you hanging out with me in the shop today, and we'll see you next time.